All right.
All right.
That's
great.
That's good. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're
All right.
welcome.
So I will just dive in. No need to delay. Let me pull up my my questions here. All right. So Chai, what did you enjoy most about the Flawless Consulting Workshop?
One of the things I enjoyed the most, Lydia, is typically courses at Shell, we have internal folks run those courses, those facilitate those courses. And that's great because we get to kind of learn from folks who have been in these roles before. But because the consultant role is new in our HR model, I found it helpful to have an external consultant in. In the previous HR model, we've had HR business partner roles and HR manager roles, HR account manager roles. And I think most of the class participants that I was with have been in a multitude of those jobs. That being said, consulting was part of it, but not all of the job. And it was helpful to actually get an external perspective and almost a bit of a clinical perspective of this is what consulting is externally, and this is how we can use it internally. So I found that helpful because especially in this new world, we need to be able to think a little bit more about how our skill sets are used internally, but also how they're marketable externally. And I felt like this course was a nice mixture of those two things.
That's great. And you still found it applicable. You said the external perspective and as relevant to and useful to the internal consulting perspective.
Absolutely. You know, to be completely honest, initially I was a little bit skeptical in terms of I'm not sure how much of this external consultant definition or flawless consulting will imply internally. And I think all of us were relatively new to the role, given the model had just started a couple months prior to us taking this course. But as you and the facilitator, as you guys went through the concepts and kind of the stages, they're actually very similar to how we do HR business partner or HR account manager work in the past. The nice thing about the course was that it's a nice refresh, and it's a nice way to reflect and look into those steps a little bit further versus intrinsically knowing them. And so being able to kind of compare, okay, in an HR account manager role or an HR business partnering role, this is what I typically would have done. Through the Flawless Consulting course, we were able to practice that to another degree. But also we were able to also reflect on, okay, this is how I did it in the past. If I were to do it maybe a little bit differently, I might be able to get different and better results.
Great. That's great. What results have you seen from applying the Flawless Consulting tools and frameworks in your work with clients and or coworkers within HR?
Yeah, it's a good question. One of the things I think I've realized quite quickly in the course, and it was something that I think you had stated in the very beginning around stating your wants. And so in the consultant course, or in the consultant role, I should say, I initially was wondering, well, why would I ever state my wants? I'm the consultant, internal to these clients, to my HR colleagues or to the business. My want is to deliver this objective or to deliver this project for them. And I found it helpful to actually pause and reflect and say, actually, if I state my wants in terms of, you know, here's the responsibility I think I can have in this role, here's the accountability that I think you need to have as the business lead or as the HR client, whoever that is. I think it was helpful to kind of set a level playing stage in terms of I wasn't necessarily just an extra pair of hands. I wasn't just the expert in that particular situation that I'm referring to. I was really seen as a collaborative partner in the project. And I think if I hadn't actually reflected on that and said, here are my wants, here's what I really want to be able to do for you, but I need you to do this for me, that I think helped me set that level with that business partner and with those clients to be able to deliver a really good product at the end.
Great. Any tangible results that you feel like you can point to as a result of applying the contracting model, maybe more efficient meetings, improved work product, so to speak, more clarity, anything like that you feel like you can point to and measure even?
I think I was really clear on my boundaries. So coming back to kind of the new HR model, we're all kind of acting our way into it. It's the new model. The business the HR, we're all kind of trying to figure out how do we respect the model to the best of our ability, but also act with purpose and make it fit for purpose. And I think there was one situation in a project where it was actually coming to the end. And throughout the project, I was always really clear around what my boundaries were to say, I'm going to deliver the strategy alongside kind of the project team, take it to a certain stage. And when it went into implementation, that's where it went back to the asset or back to the business. And just with a little bit of scope creep, as there usually is with projects, there was an ask from the business to say, hey, you've developed a strategy for us. Could you potentially sit in with us on one of the business planning meetings, which became quite asset specific. And I think if I thought about how I would have maybe operated prior to taking the course and actually reflecting on what my wants are and what my boundaries were, I would have naturally just said, yeah, I'm happy to do it. I'm flexible. I can kind of go with it. But what was helpful, I thought, was, well, actually, for them to take this under their wing and to make this fully their accountability, and for them to also make this fully successful, I can actually be part of it. I'm happy to support in the background where I need to do, but I can't necessarily be in that meeting because it would probably provide the wrong message because it needs to be locally owned. And so I revisited those boundaries to say, hey, remember when we talked about this, and this is when I would step out. I want to stay really, really, I want to stay respectful of that because of X, Y, and Z. So it was met with a little bit of tension with the business, but I think because I had that meeting in advance and I was clear about that throughout the project, it made it a lot easier to have that conversation with them.
That's great. And did you hear anything from them after that meeting that you were not in?
Not really, to be completely honest. So one of the things I have to do is kind of check back in to say, hey, how did that go? The process is still ongoing because it's business planning. The period is going on as we speak. So we probably won't hear for another couple of weeks, but I've heard that they've had the meeting. It was fine. It was successful. They've moved forward. I think it was probably okay.
Interesting. It's sort of like you just said, you're going to go fish.
Yeah.
I'm not going to hand you this fish. You're going to go fish. And now you get to hear what happened when they fished.
Exactly. And I think part of it was being able to balance part of the role was to set the strategy and set the stage gates and all these kind of things, but it wasn't necessary to be part of the implementation because it wasn't meant to be globally owned as I'm global in my role. So it was helpful to actually have that boundary set in the beginning to say, this is what we agreed to. Has something changed that I don't know about, and approach it from that perspective? And nothing really had changed. It was really more around, I think, their comfort level of what HR had provided in the past.
That's great. And another result out of that, it sounds like, is not only their capability, their increased capability in the business.
Oh, absolutely.
But also save time for you. I mean, because create means you are not then adding value to other projects.
Exactly. That's right.
Yeah. Great. My questions. And I'll be quick here because I know we're at the top of the hour. What surprised you most about the experience?
I think what surprised me most was a lot of the steps that we had gone through in terms of flawless consulting and the contracting piece of it. In previous HR roles, whereas I was the HR account manager, business partner, I've done those things before. Maybe not sequentially as the process had dictated, and probably not to the degree that I should have done them. Where I would maybe say, oh, I probably don't need to do the contracting piece, or I know this person and I think we have a pretty good understanding. I think in the new role, what I realized was because I'm not directly interfacing with clients all the time, I need to be able to do those steps a little bit more diligently, because that helps the client, but it also helps me do the best job that I can do.
Great. That's great. Isn't that funny how we go, yeah, I know this, but I'm not maybe
exactly
as much as I could.
Exactly. This, I think, forced me to be a little bit more respectful to the process, but also to myself and the client, because being clear kind of early upfront and foremost with the client, I think, has helped with the projects. Whereas in the past, I think we relied on the relationships a little bit more, but we don't always have that. We don't have that anymore, just given the new model.
Yeah, right. And so the process is everything.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's great. Were there other elements of the flawless consulting learning journey that you found useful?
One of the things I referred to earlier, but I want to reiterate again because I do think it's really important, is around stating wants. So that was one of the pieces in the course that you had walked us through that I was a little bit surprised about. And I was kind of thinking, is this something that we really need to do? It seems like a bit of an awkward process. But stating the wants of the consultant, myself in that process, I think I found that super helpful. It's a little bit awkward when you first start doing it. I think we even had a practice session in the Flawless Consulting course where we had shared with a partner what we wanted. And that also felt quite awkward. And it doesn't necessarily need to be as direct as that. It has to be kind of within one's own style. But I did find in the project, when I did state it, I found that I was more comfortable throughout the process versus assuming or wanting that person to just pick up on what my wants were. I've also found that in other kind of courses and other kind of interactions I've had with different colleagues, I've shared that with them to say, well, have you even told the person what you want? Did you expect them to know, and how would you have expected them to know that? And I think initially when you say something like stating your want, it seems a little bit selfish, but I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't do that. And the term consultant seems like you can't state your wants, but it's actually a bit of a fallacy that you should, because at the end of the day, you and your client want the same thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
One last question, and then I'll let us run, because I apologize for my being late.
That's okay. Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone considering registering for Flawless Consulting?
I would say if you're in a consultant role, or you're new in the consulting space, or you're in a role where you're just advising someone and trying to kind of help them with a situation or a project, I would highly recommend it. I did the contracting portion of the Flawless Consulting course, and initially my reaction was, do I really need this? I feel like I've done this before in HR, account manager, business partnering type roles. But I think what this course did was it helped me actually pause and reflect and have that time to go, okay, I do these things, but do I do them to the degree that I should in this new role? And I think having that time, it was a 2-day course, I think having that time in the course to not only have an external facilitator come in and tell us about consulting in the external world, but also share that experience with my other colleagues was really helpful to say, maybe I'm not doing it to the best of my ability and I could practice more. And so I found that it's been really, really quite helpful, and I would encourage folks to take on the course.
Thank you so much, Chai. That's so helpful, and you're so succinct and dynamic, and just a pleasure to work with. And so I appreciate all your words, and just great insight about the results, because that's what I always like to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. I was surprised as well, to be completely honest. I'm surprised that I'm getting what I want out of this.
Yeah,
just saying what I want.
Yeah, it's amazing how simple it can be when it's that fun kind of like, wow, it's actually way more simple.
Yeah.
The more simple I make it. And
Absolutely.
I hate to make an abrupt goodbye, but I do need to run, and I so appreciate this. And you will see the video when it comes out. So I'll make sure you and Stephen and Ariana get the first peek.
Perfect. It was lovely to chat, Lydia.
Likewise, Chai. I hope we talk again soon.
Yeah, talk soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.